You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll arise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow. There I go.
A very good evening to you and welcome once again to Reparations Now. This is our third program for 2018. This program is brought to you compliments of the Department of Social Cohesion in the Ministry of the Presidency, and it is only fitting that, considering on the 2nd of April 1810 African culture was officially banned in the county of Berbice, that the state should be involved in making Africans aware of issues related to their existence here in the country. I'm Jonathan Adams, your host, and with me tonight are Brother Royston Peters, Sister Penda Guyana, and Brother Eric Phillips. This evening we've got a very interesting program, as today is the 211th anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade, and it is also the UN Day which marks the abolition of that transatlantic slave trade. And so we are going to be showing you a short video which is entitled One Africa, In Through the Door of No Return, which deals with the slave trade. Then we're going to have a report on the Birmingham Reparations Conference by our brother Eric Phillips. Then Sister Penda Guyana is going to come in with Do You Know? Brother Peters is going to be making a presentation on reparations works, the works of the Reparations Committee. And then we close off the program with Brother Eric Phillips speaking to you from the Guyana Reparations Story, that powerful book which was written by the Guyana Reparations Committee. This program is brought to you auspices, like I said, of the Department of Culture. The executive producers, the Guyana Reparations Committee. The producers are Brother Elton McCrae and Sister Esther Gittings, and the director of the program is Brother Eric Phillips. And with, not Brother Eric Phillips, Brother Royston Peters. And without much further ado, we go straight into our history session, One Africa, In Through the Door of No Return.
Here it is. Here it is, the point of departure, the door of no return. Here it is. It is from here that we were sent away at night by the water, and it is at night by the water that I return. Do they remember us? Do they remember us? Is our memory buried here? Is our memory buried here? Can I find my father's memory? My ancestors' memory? My memory? Can I find our memory? Who's there? Who can answer me? Is there someone there to answer me? Is there someone there to answer me? Can these walls talk?
At this time, we will relight the candles and go forward into the last exit that the slaves saw before going out on the ship. This is called the door of no return. Ask each one to light
I found
the
my own
candles.
voice ricocheting off the walls inside this place. It was mixing with other voices just like mine. I was with Margaret, Eleanor, Pat and John from New York, Joanne from New Jersey, Kwame and Charlotte from Illinois, Nana and Amicus from New York, Ophelia and Frank from Birmingham, Bob, Emery and Sharon from Jamaica, Juanita Augustine from Puerto Rico, Jose and Layla from Brazil, Gloria from Cuba, Kwaku from Suriname. Is this where my father stood? On the very ground on which our ancestors stood before they were shipped out into the horrible tunnel of the Middle Passage? How do we face this history of exile? The legacy of the lash on our backs, now imprinted on our souls, seems to give us the strength we need to begin to remember.
And kept for a period of time until they were shipped out to areas unknown to them at that point. In this day and time, we know that many of our ancestors were shipped to South America, the Hades, to Jamaica, West Indies, and also to the Americas. We are here today to come back forward and to give thanks and praise that the Almighty has spared our life to be able to give thanks and praise to those who have gone before us, those who are with us now, and those who will come after us. So we are in these chambers because these are the monuments that have been built to corral us and to house us. And so we come forward today to say thank you to our ancestors. Help us to be able to go back and to pull that youngster or that sister or that brother together and say, hang on, stay strong. We're going to make it. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
We want to blow out the candles. What we'd like to do at this time is have you to blow out your candles. Take a moment. We want to call out the names of those ancestors that have gone on before us. Harriet Ross Tubman,
Frederick Douglass, Rosa Parks,
Marcus Garvey,
Malcolm X.
You know, what do you do? Why do you do what you do at these castles? Why do you bring people here?
One, because it's part of our history. And we believe very strongly that when people come to this place, that it's more than just a tourist visit. Because there are so many of us that never ever thought that we would ever come back to Africa, our ancestral homeland, much less to stand in the place that they took our ancestors from. So it gives us an opportunity to pay homage to our ancestors, to thank God for the blessing for returning us. For those of us who've really been blessed to live here, I never thought I'd live here. For me, for my husband, for my family, we need to share that experience. We need to let brothers and sisters know that it's possible and that this is our home. This is our land. We're not foreigners here. So that's why we do it. It's not for money, but it's an experience that most people want to experience. It's a connection to our past. You know, it gives us the opportunity to really know who we are as we retrace the steps of our ancestors. The Jews do it. They have a Holocaust. No one ever forgets the Holocaust. How can we allow someone to forget our Holocaust? Over 100 million Africans dead? It's no joke. So for that reason we do it, is to connect. It's to really make us a part together of that extended family. Because we're one Africa. We're Africans, you know. So we say one Africa.
During slavery, little children were taken away from their mothers. Can you imagine that I would take you and sell you from your mother? No, but that's what slavery was. It meant that you would never see your brothers or your sisters ever again. So we don't want to forget, do we?
I got it when we went to Goree. And then when we came here and it was dramatized, and we really, really lived it. There's nothing like it.
Tell me the story of some of the stories of the experiences of people who've come through here.
We had a sister that came and she went into a trance. She started talking in tongues and no one knew what she was saying. And each time she came into the sight of the dungeon, it happened to her.
Well, I felt angry. You know, I mean, to think that people, you know, you go through that last door. I thought about going through that last door, and you don't know where you're going. You don't know where you're going. You don't even know if you're going to come back. Actually, you don't know anything. You just go out through that last door, and you don't see that continent anymore, at all. And that's horrible. That's really horrible. And I felt that pain.
We had another woman that came into the dungeons, and she said she felt as though the ancestors someone had passed her, that she could actually feel the presence of that individual. And for her, she needed to go through the experience. We had one sister who came and never had an opportunity to go through. So many things happened she didn't go through. She just couldn't, because some people really can't. They can't make this walk. She went all the way back to the United States and came back a couple of weeks ago and asked me if I would go with her through this experience. And it was something that she herself had to do before she went anyplace else in the world. So for me, I know when I first came here, I had an experience that's very difficult to explain. But I knew when I went through it, when I came here, when I spent time in the dungeons and those ancestors embraced me, I felt warm, I felt comfortable, I felt like I'd really come home. And I knew then that Ghana was going to be the place that I was going to live the rest of my life. So that's why we do it. You know, people need to know this. Just like today, we needed the children to be able to connect with our brothers and sisters from the other side so that they know that we're not strangers, we're family. And that's important, you know, because we have to build the bridge. Everybody else doesn't. Why shouldn't African people? You know? It wasn't us that went to the Berlin Conference, divided up Africa. So that's why we do it.
Many who have taken up residency in Ghana, like my father had planned to do, who not only call Africa their ancestral home, but who now wake up every morning to the sounds of the lapping waves in their African home.
Okay, I'm up. Huh? Whose house is this? Our house. Us. This is our house. Bongo Man, Nana, us. Yes. Come here.
Amakus and her husband Nana sold their home in the U.S., picked up and moved to Africa. Bongo Man pulled up his roots in Jamaica and has handcrafted a fishing boat in order for he and Nana to start their own system of fishing. They now take visitors through both the Cape Coast and Elmina forts.
We have to reflect on the strength and the fortitude of our ancestors to have gone through this campaign. And we have continued the campaign in the diaspora, and now we're back home. So we're trying to make this connection together.
87. The thing that impressed me most about being in Ghana, that everybody here was black. I love that about being in the place, that everybody here looked like me. And then when I had an opportunity to come again and see that not only did they look like me, there were people that acted like our people. It was a sense of recognition as to where you belong. There was a certain spirit that was on you that I didn't have in America. There's a certain spirit that was on me when I went through those dungeons. that said for me, yes, you are home. Home.
I met many Africans born on the continent who did not know that I, too, am a child of Africa. I found what some in Ghana referred to as a local amnesia regarding slavery and the slave forts. It was initially very painful because it meant that if they did not remember slavery, they did not remember me. I dug deeper. Certainly you must have been told stories about your great-grandparents having been stolen, villages being ravaged, populations destroyed. Ah, yes, an answer might be. But what do you think happened to those people who were taken as slaves? What do you think happened to their children, their children's children? Ah, so that's who you are. I recoiled as I remembered Africans from the continent living in America, having to explain to some of us that no, they do not live in trees, and no, they are not all starving. I recoiled as I remembered the many misconceptions about Africa I was taught as a child. Tarzan loomed in my memory. Chapters in school books called The Dark Continent. Why were we lied to as children? Why are the world's children still lied to today? The system that separated us continues to work night and day to keep that separation as vast as the ocean itself. I began to see this fort not only as a portal, but also as a lens through which we see each other. A lens through which Africans from both sides of the Great Divide can see all sides of our common past.
Excellent. One Africa, the door of no return, Goree Island and the rest. Today marks the 211th year of the abolition of that horrible trade in captured Africans, kidnapped Africans. Sister Penda, did you know?
Yes. My Did You Know today, as you know, it's based on the remembrances you earlier said, Brother Jonathan. What is amazing is as you sit here and you look at that footage, it's very hard to imagine the horrors, as the sister said, that our people went through before being placed on those ships, and even when they are on the ship, not knowing where they're going to, and the conditions. For example, did you know that in those castles, the first thing they did was to separate the men from the women, right? And then, if a woman gave birth while she was in holding, as soon as the baby was weaned a little, that child would be taken from her and put in another pen, as they were called. These places that they held them were called pens. Did you know that? They would be placed in pens. And so the babies would be placed by themselves in these pens. Now, my Did You Know today is based on the rebellion and the strength of those Africans, because they were captured. Our ancestors were captured and placed there. And we rebelled. So the ones that were rebelling continually, they would be put, men and women, together in a holding pen, and they would be beaten. They had to break you. You would be broken. And if they could not break you, you will be thrown overboard. They pushed you out, and you'll be thrown overboard to the sharks. So this was a very traumatic time. And as the sister said, the resilience of our ancestors to endure all this so that we can be sitting here today, speaking and conversing on this Remembrance Day. Now, some of my did you knows are this. Did we know when that trade of bringing our ancestors here, do we know in this country when that was terminated and why? It was terminated in 1812 And by whom? England. Now, we have to ask ourselves, why did Britain terminate or affect the termination of the trade? And the basic reason was this. It was not their goodness of their hearts, as people want you to know. It was an economic thing. It was unfair competition between the Spaniards and the British. So the British had the superior fleet, and they would interrupt the Spaniards, the Spanish fleet, and they would capture or take away their cargo, which was human cargo. But one of the things that I want us to understand here, and I mean all these things that I'm throwing out on this Remembrance Day, is that I want people to research. Not one of those that were captured off those ships, because it was under the pretext that they were rescuing us from, not one was returned to the motherland, or not one was freed. They were still taken into captivity and be enslaved, right? So we had this situation where it was stopped because of economic reasons. And then the other thing I want to ask is here in this country, because I'm talking now about resilience and I'm talking about the rebellion nature. Even though they were captured, our ancestors did not accept their situation. They were constantly rebelling. So this is what I said. We have here in Guyana a lot of our Africans that were captured were of a very rebellious nature. And some of our most significant revolutionaries came from a specific area, a coastal area. And that area was called the Gold Coast. It got its name mainly because of the gold that was the main attraction there. But then 3 of our most revolutionary people that came from that area. 1, Coffee. We have Kwamina and Gladstone. And we have Damon.
So
right?
Did we know that they were from that part of Africa?
Yes, we know that they were from that part of Africa. Did you know that they were from Ghana and they were from the Akan nation? Now, they were constantly in revolt. And what happened is, as I said before, in that holding area that the young lady spoke about on that documentary, when they take us into the dungeons, they had a holding area where when we rebelled, they would put you in and be broken. If they could not break you, you were thrown over. Now, the sharks knew that they had food. So do you know that the sharks would literally follow the ships all the way? Because they knew they had food, dead or alive. What do I mean by that? Because of our rebellious nature, every opportunity we got, we rather jump overboard than be brought or to be enslaved.
Sister Pender, can I ask a question? Is it true that the sharks still follow that route
But
today?
This is what we're told. We're told that they still follow that route.
211 years after.
I'm telling you, the genes, their genes, that homing device, they're still looking for food, right? So they did follow the ships. And what is so amazing is that they know that not only would they get those that died during the passage that they would throw, but the people, every opportunity they would jump over. So that is why they were chained and brought up chained, because if they allowed them to be free, this wouldn't happen. But just winding down, I want to say that even when they got here to these parts of the world, the rebellion continued. It continued to the point where the planters had to employ people to keep our ancestors on those plantations, because they were still so rebellious that they would escape. And you can see that the rebellious nature, not wanted to be enslaved, was played out by Coffee in 1763. It was played out because he was going to make a republic out of Demerara and Berbice. We have this in our Reparations story. And then we have 1823. We have the revolution again of our, rebellious Africans who said, look, this thing isn't going to work. So we had that happening with Kwame Gladstone and all these, and there were 100 and something plantations involved in that 1823. So fast forwarding now, we have, they still kept fighting until the Emancipation Act, and it was the 1823 that forced their hands, because that revolution caused, it undermined the plantation system. So they had to hurry up, and here came the 1833 Act. But then even after that, our rebellious nature played out finally for us. And that was in 1834, when Damon decided, look, we've brought these planters to their knees. And they're still telling us, they still have a scheme that says that we have to work an apprenticeship period. And he said, no, we're free, we're not working. And so what he did, he went into the area where our director, Brother Royston, came from, Essequibo, and they gathered in the Trinity Churchyard at La Bella.
Is that
Alliance.
church still there?
The church is still there.
Ah, that's important.
And
Did you know?
Did you know that? And what is more important is that, did you know that our director's father was churched there when he died? That was interesting, But the church is still there. And what he did is that, to show his determination, he hoisted a white flag and say, this is the flag of our African independence. And he did this on the 9th of August.
So that there's another, did you know that on the 9th of August, 1834, right, Africans hoisted the flag of freedom?
For freedom, yep. Yes. And so I just want to end off by saying that our rebellious nature continued, and we always wanted to be free and not to be enslaved. So we went through all these trials and tribulations.
Yes, excellent. Did you know, Sister Penda Guyana Reparations Committee? Did you know?
Did you know?
And so we move straight on to our brother Eric Phillips, who is the chair of the Guyana Reparations Commission. And I would say, I just can't introduce the man just like that. I must give some superlatives, who is doing an excellent job in leading the Guyana Reparations Committee. Say what you want. Brother Eric Phillips, give us the report on the London conference,
yes,
the Birmingham conference.
The Birmingham conference was held on the 17th of March. It was held by INOSAR, which is the International Network of Scholars and Academics for fighting for reparations to Africa. It had people from all over the UK. I found some Namibians with some traditional outfits that I'd never seen before, but it was full of content. And at that conference, there were 2 letters from the African continent. 2 African chiefs are now involved with other chiefs setting up a reparations movement, because they don't see the African Union being proactive. And they're again from Ghana. So I brought back those 2 letters. And they're looking, this particular network, they're looking to go to Benin in September and Senegal in April. They've invited us there. But it was very important to see that among the people who participated, we have Sister Esther Zosi, whose mother is actually Guyanese and whose father is Barbadian. So wherever we go, we seem to find Guyanese involved in this struggle for reparations. And she's the leading voice in the UK. She's from an organization called PARCO. And her view is slightly different from ours. She believes that you must anchor the reparations movement to Africa, because that's our strength, that's our homeland. So as much as we in the Caribbean and Guyana are looking for the 10-point plan, she believes that the whole issue of reparations must be Pan-African, because we need to relate back to Africa, we need to connect back to Africa, we need to return through the door of no return, we need to have economic links with Africa, we need to have cultural links with Africa, and indeed, she pointed out that the Chinese do this, the Indians do this, everybody does this throughout the world, because without Africa as our strength, as the motherland, as the land of where civilization began, without us relinking to that, we're going to be doing things in a vacuum. So it was a very intriguing conference. I spoke as part of a panel. We had representatives also from NCOBRA, who is from the USA, and it is sponsored by 2 universities. And one of the things they asked is why the University of Guyana is not involved in reparations. Of course, they had attended the Center for Reparations Research launch in Jamaica, and they believe that now is the time where universities throughout the Caribbean and throughout Africa should not only be researching reparations, but should be putting together the correct narrative of our history. In Guyana, we don't have a correct narrative. As you can see, we just celebrated the life of Cheddi Jagan. There are a lot of distortions about his history. Clem C. Turan wrote a very important 3-page article in the Stabroek showing the truth. And so we need to get a correct narrative. And indeed, I'm hoping that sometime this year or next year, the government of Guyana will bring together our chief historians, including Clem C. Turan, who is a professor emeritus in London who teaches Indian history, so that we can rectify the distortions and have a correct narrative. And in that correct narrative, the contributions of all the races will be given equity. And so the children of Guyana, the young people of Guyana, will start respecting themselves differently. Because right now we have political narratives that distort. And who loses out in that? Us. Because our contributions are never given value. We're always at the bottom of the ladder, as Cheddi Jagan said. So I think for the Guyana Reparations Committee, we need to start reaching out. They fully supported our claim for 18% of Guyana. They see us on YouTube. As a matter of fact, they made several suggestions on what should be done on this show. And they are very, how can I say, thankful that the president of Guyana is involved in this. I told him he is a historian. They were very intrigued that Guyana is the only country that has funded through subvention a program for the International Decade. They're very thankful that this is one of the few reparations groups that meets every week and that has a TV program. So we are doing many things first, and it comes back to that revolutionary spirit that Sister Penna was speaking about. But it shows that the work we are doing in the Guyana Reparations Committee is being watched all the way to Africa. And indeed, there was a second meeting called Rep Africa, where young people in London and the UK who are involved in reparations, they're seeking to come to meet us and to visit Jamaica. So it was a terrific trip, and I'm hoping that the other trips we'll make this year, where other reparations members will go to Suriname and Jamaica and perhaps even Benin or Senegal, that we will start to internationalize our struggle. And they've invited us to the huge march they have every August 1 in London, with the Rastafarian community marching on the UK calling for reparations.
Okay, thank you very much for that update, Brother Eric. You mentioned the connection to the motherland. Is it merely psychological or is it economic also too?
It's psychological, it's cultural, it's emotional, and it's economical. And they've also agreed that without land, there's no reparations. Because what are you? You're free, but you're economically still enslaved.
Yes, and on that note, we'll take a break so that we can inform our audience about things coming up in the African community that centers around the Reparations Committee. And when we return, we go to Brother Royston, who will tell us about some of the things that the Reparations Committee is doing. Thanks for bringing us up to date with the fact that we are being watched all the way in the motherland.
Yes.
You're on.
Yes, Brother Royston. Brother Royston, the man from the place where the Africans hoisted the flag. Did you know that the Dutch were watching our reactions in Guyana to make a determination as to whether they would free their enslaved Africans? Did you know that?
Yes.
Excellent. Can you pull us up a little bit and then Royston will come in?
Yes. This is quite true because I realized this from another historian, Tommy Paine,
Yes.
who wrote in his book, 10 Days That Changed the World. Our behavior determined what happened in the other countries, because during that period, if we had rebelled a little more, it was our conduct and what we did during that period that made them say when they came this is from Parliament in London, they said that had we not conducted ourselves a certain way, that we would have set back the emancipation of the other countries.
Excellent.
So again, we're a first.
Brother Royston, and we can come back to that in our discussion period about the leadership role that Guyana has played in the past and continues to play in the emancipation and total liberation of the enslaved peoples of the world. Brother Royston.
Yeah, and I know coming out of that, do you know, is another element. And do you know that we were not slaves, but enslaved Africans?
Excellent. Excellent.
Right, and so we're on to the work of the Guyana Reparations Committee. We have our regular weekly meetings on Thursday. Every Thursday is at 5:30 in the afternoon at the Museum of African Heritage on Bream Avenue. And again, we want to extend welcome to all who is available to come in and just join with us. It's an open session. And though we have our regular commissioners or committee members per se, we do have an open door session where all can come and be part of our discussions. So that happens on Thursdays, and you're welcome to come and join us. We have our regular meetings of our subcommittees because we have about 6 subcommittees that are currently working. We have subcommittee on land, subcommittee on mobilization, a media subcommittee, parliamentary bill subcommittee, history and research subcommittee. We have one on youth. Right, I think those are the committees we have that are working, and those would meet. Of course, the chairs for those would indicate to the membership when those are going to be. So just be in tune to your chairs, and they'll advise on when those meetings are going to be held. We have also we had just recently concluded our outreaches to Berbice, Linden, Essequibo, and we are now planning our regional conferences, which are going to be held, and we're determining that how it does happen, whether it's going to be Essequibo, Berbice, Linden. Those details are now being fine-tuned, but we'll let you know in short time what's going to be happening in that respect. Today, we had a commemoration of the International Day for the commemoration of the 2011th anniversary of the abolition of the slave trade, and Brother Rudy Goyan presented an awesome lecture there, and he had a wonderful session. Had a nice interaction with the audience in the house. Fantastic session, and I want to commend him for the efforts. We have also, as Brother Eric mentioned, a number of international conferences that we have to get ourselves geared for, interaction with Senegal, Suriname, and Benin. And so those are activities that we have to get ourselves organized and prepared for. We have our fortnightly television program, the second Thursday at 9:05 in the evening, right here at channel NCN. And then on the fourth Sunday at 7:05 in the evening for a session, the one we're having here this evening. So those are the general activities that we have planned for. And of course, the conferences we're pushing to have them within the second quarter, because we have other activities we want to have organized for down the line. So those conferences are being geared to happen during the second quarter. But importantly, the more fundamental reasons for having those conferences is to have what I want to call grounding. So we can go out in the communities and really touch base with our members, have a sense of what their views and understandings are on the issue of reparation, understand what it is that they would like to have, and incorporate those into the activities we're planning to make it more inclusive for them and for ourselves as representatives. So those are generally the activities we have planned for the short term of the Commission.
You know, I'm intrigued by the talk of the Parliamentary Bill Subcommittee. What is the work of the Parliamentary Bill Subcommittee?
Well, in the first instance, that committee is focusing on the area that the Commission, the Reparations Committee, sees as its first mandate, and that is looking at the issue of land, reparative land. And so there's already a running out of a petition. And I know a lot of persons would have signed on already, and we want to engage Cabinet, Parliament to ensure that the 18% that we've been asking for as part of, in the first instance, the reparative considerations for the work of our ancestors ever since they came here, is 18% of Guyana's land. And there has also been a working out of how that's going to be apportioned, how it's going to be determined. All those works are currently happening, and so we want to engage to have that addressed soonest.
Brother Eric, the parliamentary bill, is there anything you'd like to add about the work of that?
Well, at the Land COI, the Commission of Inquiry, we spoke about an ancestral rights bill in which we argued that there's already a Reparatory Justice Act in Guyana, a precedent called the Amerindian Act of 2006, which gave indigenous people 13.8% of Guyana. We cleared 15,000 square miles, so we're arguing that we should have that 18% to mirror the pain and the criminality that happened, plus all the things we did to build Guyana. So the committee, the Parliamentary Bill Committee is working on that, and as Royston mentioned, we already have designed a trust, a perpetual trust, in which the land would be placed, and there are rules by which any descendant of African in Guyana, whether you're mixed or not, can apply to benefit from it. So that work is going on, and we're hoping to engage the government, including the opposition, this year, because we need to get closure on this.
You know, it's very interesting. Even though I'm involved in this thing, every time we sit down to talk about this thing, it excites me. It's almost like you're finding a new romance. Brother Eric, we come to you, the Guyana reparations story. 100 million tons of earth.
Yeah.
100 million tons of earth.
Yeah.
Speak to us on the Guyana reparation story, an aspect that you wish to educate the public
Well,
on
last
today?
week we spoke about the first of the 4 books within the Guyana reparations story, and that was in the beginning. We talked about Lucia, we talked about how we got here, when we got here, and we showed the film, the DNA.
Can I ask a question? For the benefit of those who may not, can you run a quick synopsis of the first book?
Well, the first book says that the Earth is 4 billion years old, and that we were the first people. And that has been validated through carbon testing with the skeleton of Lucia, which has been carbon dated as 3.2 million years old. We then spoke about Dr. Spencer Wells, who did genetic work, and he showed that indeed the first person was an African and was somewhere in Ethiopia or that part of the world, and that every other person in the world is a descendant of those original people. And he showed the migration paths 60,000 years ago. He showed all of that. So that's the first book. We also showed Luzia, who was found in Brazil in 1975, that showed that Africans were here before indigenous people. We showed the skeleton of Naia, which was found in the Gulf of Mexico. We showed the Olmec heads, which our historian Guyanese Ivan van Sertima spoke about, and we showed the connection. The second book is called Africa Before Enslavement, and it speaks about the great civilizations we came from. It shows what the Moors did. It shows that we were the first involved in mathematics and shipping. It showed Mansa Musa. It showed Timbuktu. It showed the deep science that we were involved in. It showed, for example, that the father of medicine is Imhotep, and that he had written a book and was doing surgery in 92 different diseases. We showed that Pythagoras was 2,000 years after pi was found, even though he claimed he found pi, because the pyramids had pi. And so we spoke about the greatness of African civilizations and what we would have been had there not been this intervention by criminals who came and not only created wars and brought us to this part of the world, but who took our history and claimed it to be theirs. And John G.M. James, who was another Guyanese who we have forgotten, wrote the book Stolen Legacy, which showed that Greek history and everything they claimed was actually African. So we started with in the beginning to show that we were the first people and everyone is a descendant. We spoke about Africa before enslavement. The third book is called, the Holocaust, the African Holocaust in Guyana. And that showed that 473,000 of our ancestors died here. It talked about all of our contributions. It showed the brutality, we were as if we were cows, and the loss of life, the criminality, the rapes, and also the resistance of our ancestors. They always resisted it. And then the fourth book talks about our claim, our legitimate claim, based on the fact that there's already reparations in Guyana to indigenous people, and the fact that slavery has been defined as a crime against humanity by the United Nations. And so we're putting together that legal case, not only for through CARICOM to the 8 European nations, but to the Guyana state, because our historical research has shown that it was the Guyana state that implemented these 15 discriminatory steps that have made us where we are today, which is, as Chetty Jagan said, the bottom of the ladder. But I also wanted to reflect on that bottom of the ladder comment that he made, because people are misinterpreting it. They're saying that he said that because he believed that all over the world, Africans were at the bottom of the ladder. But the context in which he used it was that the British would not have given Burnham independence.
Exactly.
Because the British knew that Africans are at the bottom of the ladder. So he's saying that even though Burnham was more sophisticated than him, more educated than him,
he should not
that he's superior to
Burnham.
And therefore, it wasn't about what our historians are saying, that he was saying that we're at the bottom of the ladder. He was just saying that his belief is that Indians are superior to Africans.
It was a purely racist
statement.
Yes,
purely racist. And Clem Ciceran, in his article last week, reinforced that.
All right, Brother Eric, and to the rest of the panel. You mentioned that there is precedent in Guyana for reparations. Is it true to say that Africans in Guyana are the only people not to receive reparations? Is it true to say that the Europeans who had interests here got reparations? Is it true to say that the Indians who were here not only got reparations but also got a repatriation package?
That should have been a "do you know" question. Yes. The answer is yes.
So, Sister, by that, are you saying that Sister Penda is tasked to respond?
Because we do know indigenous people got reparations to the Amerindian Act. And I know we all know that indentures were paid and got land and were put into rice. And that the Portuguese were given licenses in our villages when we couldn't get it. So we know that history, and we need to elaborate that next session.
And we, did you know that the planters who enslaved us, they got reparations, they were paid.
20 million pounds.
Pardon?
The 20 million pounds.
Yeah, so I mean, there is precedent. And if you remember, my last Did You Know, I spoke about the Colombo in Brazil. And the VAL has to pay them reparation for damages done. So, you know, these things have been set all over.
Jonathan, the issue is that we really need to have our history taught in schools. And that is the problem we have in Guyana in terms of social cohesion. Our own people don't know our history. And therefore, we want to run from our blackness, our greatness. I remember one reporter telling me that, can you comment on African cultures dying in Guyana? Well, I am African culture, I'm not dying, you know, so the misunderstanding of what culture is. And so I'm hoping that part of our sessions, especially our youth program, will educate our youth, all youth, about the truth of our history. That we were the first entrepreneurs in Guyana in terms of the village movement. That we spent $2.5 million to build our villages, which is trillions of dollars.
25 of the approximately 200 plantations.
And that,
yes, Eric, keep going.
And that when the Portuguese came here, it was to deceive us, because they were trying to tell Africans who had left the plantations that even white people would work on a plantation, so come back. So there was a lot of deception that we've not been told. Of course, the Portuguese left and went into businesses and got supported by the government of Madeira and the British government. So we need to understand that history so that we can find ways of working together, of respecting each other. And unless this is taught in schools, the distortions in the homes, which are racially based, will continue to keep us apart.
May I come in at this point? Because one of the things that the working group of experts...
Sister Penda, just give me 2 seconds, because I feel impelled to ask for Sister Maya Angelou's Still I Rise after you finished making your comment.
Okay.
So can we line up Maya Angelou's Still I Rise?
Yeah, because even the working group of experts or people of African descent that came here
from the UN
last year, they were appalled, and I think it was on their report, their findings, number 42. They said that our history, African history, should be taught in schools, and they could not understand how it wasn't being taught. So
and that African history is Guyanese history.
Yes.
You know, we keep separating it perhaps mentally, that there's African history and Indian history and Portuguese history.
No.
The history of Guyana
yes,
is African history that's been lost.
You know, as you were speaking, it occurred to me that Africans have got 2 arrivals in Guyana. The arrival as free men, pre-Columbus,
yes,
the pre-Columbian era,
right,
and the enslavement arrival
Yeah, in 1621.
In 1621, unfortunately, all we're being told about is the 1621, not even a rival.
Yeah.
The 1621 Hall Hay.
Yes, that's
I call it a Hall Hay.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that in one of our programs, and I asked Royston and Elton to look at this, we need to show a clip of Africa, the cities of Africa. So this idea that we're in jungle and, you know, in huts needs to be destroyed, because we have very, very modern cities. I lived in South Africa for 7.5 years, and it's an incredible place. But we still have this history and this distortion that we were slaves and we came from huts and we were like monkeys and all these types of
You know
things.
what is interesting about what you're saying there is that a brother, a tremendous researcher, Brother Asher Kwesi, shows that the White House in the United States of America, Washington, D.C., is designed after a house in Africa, which is where a governor lived. So this thing about caves and huts and that kind of thing. Yes, Maya Angelou.
But I want to just
Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Maya Angelou. Sorry.
I guess there's still
Lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll arise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I'll rise.
Yes, still we rise.
All right.
Brother Royston, you got 15 seconds.
Right. And
Sister Penda, 20.
I just want to throw in a little bit on the African presence in these parts. I mean, you have to remember persons such as King Abubakari II, who would have been working in these areas long time, extracting, well, being involved in the mineral industry. So perhaps even predating the Christopher Columbus era. So all of that is presence, African presence in these parts of the country.
15 seconds, 20 seconds.
Yeah. Well, my do you know is that do you know that we not only have we had rebellious people, but we have had some very educational, strong people. For example, you touched slightly on Ivan van Sertima, but do you know that Dr. Ivan van Sertima wrote the book, They Came Before Columbus,
Exactly.
distinctly showing our presence here before that period. And not only that, he went further in defending that. He has a little booklet that's called Ivan van Sertima Before Congress. So those are two of the very dynamic works that we need to be looking at.
And there is one thing that I would like to come back to that Brother Eric spoke about. He spoke about the DNA film that we looked at last week. And I was watching at it very carefully, and what Dr. Spencer Wells was doing is that he was tracing African ancestry back to the first man.
yeah, the first intelligent man.
He has another one called Journey of Man, which
Yes.
traces African ancestry back to an African woman.
Yeah.
And so what Dr. Spencer Wells has done is that he has completed the whole thing to show that listen, the first man is African and the first woman is African. And on that note, we must wrap up. It was a pleasure being here, and it was wonderful having you invite us into your homes. So until we meet again on the last Sunday of next month, we go out saying, we must tell you that you must tune in on the 12th, the second Thursday of next month, for our youth program. And so we go out saying it is time for reparations, now.
I guess we have to wrap down this. Yes. So you guys going to be running your program